In this video, we're going to talk about judicial review in America. The court, in many ways, acts like a referee. Whenever there is a dispute about the law or a dispute between two branches of government, the Supreme Court must act like a referee and decide which side is correct. Once they do, that becomes the law of the land. Their decision is final. And that process is called judicial review. Here's how it works. Let's say Congress passes a law, and some interest group might have a concern that that law is unconstitutional. So the law might do something that the Constitution says the law can't do. This might be related to the Bill of Rights, or might be related to the powers of the federal government. In any case, somebody thinks the law is unconstitutional. How do we determine whether that's true or not? Well, that power resides in the Supreme Court. If they review the law and they look at the Constitution and they decide that yes, it is okay, then they would rule that law constitutional. It is allowed to stay in effect. If they decide, however, that it is not, they rule that law unconstitutional. That law gets struck down and it is of no force and effect. In essence, this is the law-making authority of the Supreme Court. They can't write new laws, but they can establish new legal precedent by their decisions. When they decide a case, well, there's a couple ways that the case might come before the court. One is appeal. The court might come through the appeals court system and end up at the Supreme Court, and they will have to decide which party was right. Or somebody might apply to have their case heard. They might have been aggrieved, or they might have some issue with a law that they think is unconstitutional, and say, well, they will submit an application for a writ of certiorari, which is called cert, granting cert. Once that application is accepted, then the court will hear it. That is called granting cert, when they accept that cert application. A last way is when the court is presented with an emergency appeal. That is called emergency injunctive relief. A law is put into effect and somebody appeals to the court immediately to stop it. Sometimes that's called a shadow docket, because the court makes a decision without actually having a hearing. And it is considered kind of unseemly to go that route when you want the court to do something. Once that happens, court decides that it will hear your case. They schedule oral arguments. Both parties will come before the court to make their case before the full bank of 9 judges. After they hear, the judges will deliberate and they will come to a decision. So at oral arguments, the judges already know how they're going to rule, but what they're looking to do here is just to test and to see if there's any other information that people might be able to present to them. They also might send signals to other judges through their questions. So if one judge asks the appellant a question, that might be a signal to the other people on the bench of which way they're going to rule. If you're somebody that's arguing before the court, this is your chance to try and convince the judges to see things your way. If you know that there might be 1 or 2 judges that's uncertain, you could present your case with them in mind to try and sway them to rule your way. At the conclusion of oral arguments, the judges retire to their conference chamber. Here, the Chief Justice will convene the meeting and go around the table and figure out where each judge stands. Do they want to support the application or not? Do they want to uphold the appeal, or do they want to strike down the law? And each judge will give their opinion. And if there is a clear consensus that maybe there's 5 judges that agree, then that would be sufficient. All you need is 5 of the 9 judges to agree on an outcome, and that would be definitive. Before that, though, you have to decide who's going to write the opinion. Now, the judges in the majority, one of those 5 judges, will write the decision for the court, and that is the full opinion of the court. Once they do that, that's it. It becomes law. That principle is called stare decisis. The decision must stand. Other courts need to abide by that decision of the Supreme Court. It's possible, however, that that decision is not unanimous. Sometimes it might be 5-4 or 6-3, and the judges in the minority might write a dissenting opinion. They might write the reasons why they disagree with the judges in the majority. that is often the case in a 5-4 decision. The 5 judges will write their opinion. One of the 4 judges, or maybe several, might write a dissenting opinion outlining all the reasons why they disagree and why they would have ruled differently. Sometimes judges might even write a concurring opinion, which means we agree with the result but for different reasons. And a concurring opinion allows them to articulate those reasons separately. Generally, when judges strike down laws that were passed by Congress, that is called judicial activism. An activist court is one that is very active in striking down laws that were passed by either the executive branch or the legislative branch. Judicial restraint is when the court tends to defer to laws that are passed or actions by the executive branch. So restraint is being reserved and letting the other branches of government do what they want. Activism is having a tendency to strike down laws that are passed by the other governments. An example of this process in action is the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, also known as the McCain-Feingold Act. Placed limits on individual donations during election campaigns. It also banned what it called electioneering communications by certain groups, corporations and unions, close to an election date. And it was very specific in some of its measures. However, the First Amendment to the Constitution says Congress shall make no law that abridges the freedom of speech. Well, this is a law passed by Congress. Are these limits and this ban on a certain type of communication, is that abridging the freedom of speech? Well, it's unclear. And the group that produced this movie, Citizens United, appealed their case to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, in a very controversial 5-4 decision, ruled that yes, this law was in fact restricting the freedom of speech, and therefore it had to be struck down. The law was null and void. The court was essentially making a new law. And their new law was the outcome of it, the practice was that corporations and unions could spend unlimited amounts of money at election time. Here's from Kennedy's decision. He says, the government may be committing a constitutional wrong when the law is picking certain types of speakers. If it said all speech was banned close to an election, then that might be okay, according to Justice Kennedy's interpretation. But it's when saying some people can advertise at election time and other people can't, he did not feel that that was constitutional. Moreover, he concludes that saying the First Amendment protects the speaker and the speech. So you can't just say that certain types of speakers, like unions, are not allowed. And so that is a great example of judicial review in action. So just to recap, the power of judicial review is the power of the court to review and strike down their laws. They're doing this to evaluate the constitutionality. That's what judicial review means, reviewing it to make sure it's constitutional. They don't like it, they strike it down, and that is the law-making function of the court. The decision is final. It becomes the law of the land. You cannot appeal beyond the Supreme Court.